Hey everybody, welcome to our live feed today here on YouTube. This is actually our first live feed on YouTube. We do a lot of other live feeds, but hey, we're going to talk today about tip-ups and how the easiest way to put your line on the tip-ups are. You know, I've been doing fishing with tip-ups since I've been knee-high to a grasshopper, and I don't really think there's a bad tip-up out there, but if you were going to say to me, hey, pick out the two best tip-ups that you think, right away what's going to come to me is going to be the HT polar tip-up, which has been around since the beginning of time, and the other tip-up, the same thing that's been around for, you know, a coon's age, is going to be the Beaver Dam. And they're both really great tip-ups. I would say durability, the Beaver Dam has probably got the polar beat. It's just the shaft's thicker. It's one of the things where you should grease them every year. It's just a really durable tip-up for sure. I've got some that were my dad's, and matter of fact, I think some of them that I got from my dad's were his dad's, so they're pretty old. But I would say as far as universal, probably the polar tip-up is the more universal tip-up. And the reason I say that too is because the polar tip-up definitely sets off a lot easier. Definitely take this off there. I never use that at all. What I do is I like to set it like this. I think the polar tip-up, because the flags, the stem itself is a little bit lighter, it trips a little bit easier, and you can tell that when you're pulling out the line, how easy it is, and it sets off. Where the Beaver Dam is definitely a little bit stiffer, takes a little bit more for it to release, not a lot, but just a little. Like I said, they're both really good tip-ups, very smooth. So that's what I would say. If you're looking at buying a tip-up, you don't want to spend a lot of money. Definitely the polar, and it's a little bit more universal, and I mean more of a perch, crappie, walleye tip-up. Not that you can't catch plenty of them on a Beaver Dam. It's still, again, a great tip-up. But again, I think it sets off a little bit easier. It doesn't take as much resistance to set it off. So that's the way I would go on that. But and again, this tip-up retails, boy, it's been a while since I bought some. I've actually had these sitting in my shop for a while. I'm going to be rigging them up today. I would say right around that $15 to $20 range for a polar. Beaver Dam, a little bit more expensive, but again, I would say anywhere from that 35, and that might be I might be a little bit cheap on that, $35 to $55 price range on the Beaver Dam. But again, it's going to last you a lifetime. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some Dacron on. I like to use a decent Dacron. The Woodstock, they've been around forever for Dacron line. We started using some of their super grades for open water fishing too. So it's just jumping out at me. Real simple way to do it. When you're rigging your tip-ups is basically I'm going to tie a loop. So I'm just going to spin my hand a few times. I would say ice fishing is probably one of my favorite things when it comes to fishing. Of course, you know, at the end of the season, I'm always happy to see it go, but because I'm out there every day. But I'm always happy to see it come. So anyways, just tie a loop. Oops. Tie a little better loop than that. Maybe that I shouldn't use such a sharp knife. I'm not used to having a sharp knife. We were actually cutting venison tenderloins before with that knife, and they were pretty darn good. All right, let's try that again. As long as I keep all my fingers, I'm in good shape. Okay, so you're just tying your loop, going inside, and basically coming over the tip up, clinching her down. Now what I like to do is I'm going to take my drill, my Milwaukee here, and about as easy as it goes. The biggest thing too, you guys and gals, when you're spooling your tip-ups up, is don't over spool them. You got to remember, once this line gets wet and it'll freeze up on you, it's going to expand. So then it's going to be running off the spool. You're not going to get it back on there. Oops. Back on there tight. Take your eye off. I think a guy that has done this a million times would not mess up, but you're definitely looking at the wrong guy if you don't think I don't mess up things. That's about it. 50 yards is about perfect for that. Undo it. And there we go. As easy as it gets. And I'm going to tie up a couple of, we're doing a pike show coming up here, so I'm going to tie up a couple of pike rigs, and that's basically how it goes.
So Jacob wants to know what your favorite tip-up light is.
My favorite tip-up light, boy, that is a good question. You know, there's so many lights out on the market, and they used to be pretty generic, but I've actually still got quite a few Fravel lights, and I really like the Fravel lights. Not saying that there's not better lights out there, but, you know, it's one of them kind of things where I bought about 30 of them, and I still probably got about 20, 25 of them that are still working. So, yeah. But, you know, tip-up lights are kind of like tip-ups or trucks that everybody's kind of got their favorite light for a certain reason.
So a guy wants to know what your favorite tip-up is.
My favorite tip-up is, to tell you the truth, they're both, I would say, the Polar and the Beaver Dam. But if I was just going to get one, I think I'd hate to say it, but, and I do love the Beaver Dam, but the Polar, just because, like I said, it's just, I think it's more of a multi-species tip-up. This one, you know, now I was just looking at this before. This spring is actually a little bit, this is a newer tip-up that I got a few years ago, and I haven't used it. It was still in the package. And I actually like the springs a little bit lighter. And so what I'll do with this tip-up here is I'll actually take it off and get a new one. But what I'll actually do is I'll actually pull on the spring a little bit, and I don't want it real stiff at all, especially for fishing crappies and perch and walleyes. See, now I loosened it up a little bit. It's not quite as stiff, and voila. There you go. You still even need a little bit more. Like I said, the original ones that I have, and I've got just a slew of tip-ups, definitely the springs were a lot lighter. You know, I've said this to both of these manufacturers before, and you know, and I know the owners of both of these companies. They're great people, and they're really dedicated to the sport. But one thing I said that I'd love to see them do, which I think would make a big difference to make both of these tip-ups really more universal, is that when you buy the tip-up, it should actually have 3 different springs, so 3 different flags, and the springs should have different tensions on them, like a heavier one for pike, because these just basically just pull right off of here. So pretty easy to change them. So if you had a perch crappie one, you had a walleye one, which would be a slightly stiffer, and then you had the pike one, it would really take care of a lot of the issues when it comes to fishing. You know, one thing you got to remember about when you're ice fishing too, everybody, is that there's more fronts that come through in the winter than any other time of year. Obviously, you're dealing with the coldest water conditions that there is. So there is days when these fish are extremely sluggish. You know, how many times have you guys and gals gone to a tip-up, it's never went up, and you lift up on it, and that fish is sitting on there, and he's got that hook swallowed down to his gullet there. You know, again, that's the way it is in the winter. So like I said, so it would be awesome to have some flags different, where you went and bought your tip-ups and you had 3 different flags in there with the different tensions on the springs like that. I think it'd be awesome.
So the Doughboy wants to know what type
Doughboy.
what type of rig
I love a Doughboy.
what type of rig do you prefer, and what type of leader strength and hook size?
Good, yep. Okay, so if we're talking, let's just say we're talking walleyes, I typically like to go down to a really small hook, you know, and some days it makes a night and day difference. I'm typically running about 8-pound fluorocarbon, and it all depends on the water clarity as far as the length of the leader. If I'm fishing like a lake like a Big Green where it's super clear, you know, I'm going to use a 4 or 5 foot fluorocarbon leader attached to my Dacron. If I'm fishing a lake like Petenwell, the flowage, which is real stained tannic water, you know, a 2 foot leader is more than enough. And I actually bump up my leader diameter when I'm fishing flowages because there is a lot of stumps. So I'll actually go to a 10 or 12 pound leader. And as far as hook size, I love like a 14 when it comes to walleye fishing. Hey, the other thing, now you guys kind of got me going and thinking about different things. And I love the interaction of doing these kind of things because this is definitely my passion, is the outdoors. I myself, and I just thought about this because I remember fishing the other day and we were fishing with the guys for pike and they were using bobbers. I hate using bobbers for a line marker, and I'm going to tell you why. Because at the end of the day, when you go to pick your thing, when you go to pick your tip-ups up, the bobbers most of the time will not go through, especially on when you're using beaver dams. It's not so bad when you're using a puller because then you can just slide the line out like this. But I like to use just a small split shot. To me, that works out just as good, if not better, because it doesn't interfere with when you're winding them up. And think about this, at the end of the day, your fingers are cold, you're ready to go home. I wanted to make it as easy as possible on that.
Grant wants to know, what is your favorite ice fishing rod?
My favorite ice fishing rod, boy, Grant, that is a very tough one. You know, I would say to you about ice fishing rods is that ice fishing rods, there's so many of them, not just like there is open water rods. So I'm going to say, because we use Mag custom rods, our friend, I just lost my train of thought. Pat,
Yeah.
Magalano, he is the sponsor of the show and he builds some really great custom rods. So, and he's a Youper. I like them dang Youpers. They're just good people. So, you know what? We like to always support good people and they're building good products. So, Meg's custom rod, I'm going to have to say on that. But boy, when you go to any kind of retailer and you look at the amount of rods that there is, it's overwhelming. Even though, you know, the last 4, 5, 6 years, the custom rod market has just grown astronomically, and it's kind of nice because you can get these guys to build you a rod that's custom to your fit.
Thoughts on using an iFish Pro or some other rod tip-ups?
You know, we use the Guillotine, which is a great device. Boy, I used to have one here. I think I got them all at home. I didn't bring them out. It's a jigging device, and I'll tell you something. Myself, there we go. Guillotine by Rutfin, right? The Guillotine is an awesome device. You definitely, if you've never seen one of these devices, you want to check out one of our shows that we did in the winter. We use the Guillotines a lot. It's a very unique device. And I say a device all the time because it's one of them kind of things where I can almost guarantee you this. I mean, you're going to probably laugh at me, but I would say probably 60 to 80% of the time, if you're fishing anything but pike, it's probably going to outfish you because it's so precise. So check out the Guillotine. Not saying anything bad about the iFish Pro. It's a great device too, but the Guillotine's definitely a little bit more advanced.
So Aiden wants to know, what is your favorite walleye bait for a tip-up?
My favorite walleye bait for a tip-up would be either just a gold Aberdeen hook and probably a green or orange bead, or it would be a willow spoon. I like the willow spoons a lot because they're super light and it doesn't take much for that minnow to move them back and forth. And here's another thing, again, great. I'm glad you asked me that, Aiden, because I just thought about this too. You know, when you're fishing stained water, or any type of water, but stained water more than anything, because, you know, the fish are picking up that little bit of flash and they're picking up that vibration. What we always do when we're fishing up on the flowages or any other stained water is we'll run 2 minnows on a treble hook, and one pointed one way, one pointed the other, so they're constantly struggling all the time. Because, you know, typically when when you put a minnow down there and you drop it down to whatever depth you're fishing, and what's going to happen, he's going to struggle for a minute or two at the most. He's going to realize that he can't get off or go anywhere. So his natural instinct is to sit as still as he can, because obviously he doesn't want any fish picking up that vibration. So having two minnows hooked, one on each way, they're constantly struggling against each other, and definitely can help fish locate where your bait's at, for sure.
Grant's wondering what the difference between ice fishing line and fishing line is.
You know, that's a good question. I often wondered that myself. You know, obviously Dacron's a little bit different line. It's definitely got good stretch to it. But when it comes to monofilament, that is a question. You know, it always seems like ice fishing line to me is a little bit stiffer, and you think it would be the other way around. But I don't specifically myself use a line that just is for, except for Dacron, that monofilament that just says ice fishing on it. Ice line, I should say.
Isaac wants to know what the difference between a inline reel and a spinning reel.
An inline reel and a spinning reel. Well, one thing about an inline reel, Isaac, is that you're not going to get a lot of loops in it. In an inline reel, I don't use a ton of them. I got a few. I just started kind of going to them. But an inline reel, you're not going to get a lot of wind loops in the reel itself, in the spool. So I mean, I think myself, if that's the way, if you're fishing outside a lot, that's definitely the way to go. If you're fishing in a shelter, it doesn't matter one bit, you know. But an inline also, I should say, is a lot better when you're fishing deeper water too. Holds that line tighter.
What is the best place to ice fish in Wisconsin?
Boy, that is a loaded question for sure. You know, that's one thing about Wisconsin, Minnesota, the Dakotas, this whole Midwest, you guys. We are so fortunate to have such great bodies of water. You know, like when I look at, you know, obviously we're in the central part of the Wisconsin. So when we look at fish that are basically, you're looking for eating quality fish, a lot of them 14 to 16 inch walleyes. Winnebago for me is definitely the body of water. And if I'm looking for monster walleyes, I would definitely say Big Green or the Bay of Green Bay for sure. And another great spot, you know, for really kind of all around, you know, small and large walleyes is definitely the Peatwell and Castle Rock flowage. Them are two tremendous bodies of water. They have a size limit on them, 15 to 20 or 1 over 28 inches. So obviously they're protecting some of these fish, where like on the Winnebago system, there's no size limit. Still a 5 fish limit to on Winnebago. I just talked to actually Adam Nichols from the DNR the other day, and for you people that do fish Winnebago, so far that bill has not been signed by the governor. So right now, it's still until that bill is signed, and if it is signed, it won't go into effect until April. It's still a 5 fish limit on Winnebago, no size limit. Hey everybody, we appreciate you watching our live feed here on YouTube, and you make sure you guys do me a favor, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really appreciate that. We're always putting new content on there, and remember, like I always say, hey, thanks to you guys, it's a great day to be alive.